This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Hey, Ape fans, and welcome back to Talking Apes TV. Now, I know that we teased at the end of our last episode that we were going to review the episode Screaming Winds from the Return to the Planet of the Apes series, but we're going to take our customary mid-series break so we can talk with some old friends and some new ones. But before I tell you who they are, here is my Talking Apes TV co-host, the Lucius to my Davy Jones. Everyone, say hello to Mark Ogashewitz. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Rich. I have to tell you, after spending so much time telling our own Planet of the Apes stories, I'm really kind of excited about our guest today because it's always so much fun taking a break to hear the stories from other fans as well.
Yeah, especially those who grew up in the first generation or the 1.5 generation of ape fans, just the way we did. They're those fans who watched these shows when they were first aired on television, and they're great memories. Love to hear those stories.
Yeah, sometimes I get tired of hearing myself talk. I know you probably never thought I would say something like that, but it's always good to take a break and hear these stories from other people because some of them are very similar to ours and some of them are very different.
Oh, very much so. And it's always fun to hear from someone across not just the country, but the world to hear their Planet of the Apes stories. So I'm very, very excited for this episode. Now, on our last episode, I mentioned that I learned that Henry Corden, the voice of Urko on the Return to the Planet of the Apes series, he also played a character on one of my favorite TV shows, The Monkees. I sense a simian ape chimpanzee theme going on here with my life. Well, the creator of Zilch, a Monkees podcast, his name is Ken Mills, he heard we gave them a shout out.
Shout out that you gave them because it was through their show that you found out about this Henry Corden connection.
Since then, we all became really fast, good friends. Now, there's even another Monkees Apes crossover to be revealed during our discussion, so I'm not going to tell you just now. But with all of these Monkees and Planet of the Apes crossovers, we had to do what we had to do. We reached out to Rob Dehlinger, and he wrote us a new connection jingle.
Did you know that the Monkees and the Planet of the Apes share some crazy connections? It's kind of weird, but it's kind of great.
I just got Yabba Dabba Urko out of my head, and now you're going to put another jingle in there?
Oh, you said Yabba Dabba Urko. Roll it.
Yabba Dabba Doo! When you're with General Urko, you'll have a Yabba Dabba Doo time, a Yabba Doo time, an Urko-tastic time. Urko!
I hate you so much.
I tricked you into that. It was so easy. You are so easy, Mark.
Oh, God. All right. So, anyway, since Ken is also a huge Planet of the Apes fan, we asked him to come on and talk about all things simian, from apes to monkeys. We also have another friend of the show on, Adam O'Brien from the Jogcast Network. Now, you'll probably remember that we were actually guests on his show a little while back, and so now we've brought him onto our show to talk about the Return of the Planet of the Apes animated series, as well as other pop culture fandoms.
Now, Mark, before we roll into our great discussions, I believe you have some fun news to reveal.
Well, as you may know, the first Saturday of every May is considered Free Comic Book Day, and a lot of comic book stores across the country participate in this. So I went to this event near where I lived, run by the comic book store Blast Off Comics, and I chose this place because Nicholas Meyer, the director of Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, was going to be signing, and since that is my favorite sci-fi movie of all time, I had to go. And when I got there, I was met with this pleasant surprise. Sitting right next to Nicholas Myers was the owners of Blast Off Comics, who also happened to be the authors of the Star Trek Planet of the Apes crossover comic, The Primate Directive, Scott and David Tipton.
Wow, I love when things all come together.
Yeah, and I remembered that so many of our fans have asked us if we read this comic book or this graphic novel. And so it was kind of like, the fates kind of stepping in. And so I talked to Scott and David about this after they, I got them to sign my book and get a picture with them. I had to do that. I talked to them, and we've been emailing back and forth regularly and discussing them coming on Talking Apes TV.
Nice. Well, then we got to bump Matt Damon. All right, but you know what? They're important. They wrote this great graphic novel, which I can't wait to dive into.
And I'll tell you this, I've read the book, and it's really good, and everybody should go out there and buy themselves a copy and read it themselves. I also got to say, having read the book, I've got a ton of questions to ask these guys.
So we'll wait to play that in a couple of episodes down the line. We got some more Return to the Planet of the Apes shows to review, and then we'll get to that one as a mid-break for the second half of the season. How's that?
That sounds good to me. But in the meantime, if any of the listeners out there have any questions that we might want to ask them, they should go ahead and email those to us. And we'll give the email information at the end of the show.
Yeah, plus we will put up a notification on our Facebook page, letting people know, hey, if you want to ask them a question, post here as well. So fun things to come for Talking Apes TV. Now, with that, let's hear from Ken Mills, the creator of Zilch, a Monkees podcast, as well as many other fun podcasts.
Here we come, riding down the street, gonna capture the humans, everyone we meet. Hey, hey, we're the apes, and people say we monkey around, but we took over the planet, so don't try to keep us down.
Chances are, if you were an actor working in the 1960s and 70s, you crossed over and worked on both the Planet of the Apes TV series and the Monkees TV series. Now, in 2016, we're going to continue that trend by crossing over Talking Apes TV with Zilch, a Monkees podcast.
With us today is Ken Mills, the creator and host of Zilch, to talk about his fandoms and why Urko is his favorite monkey. Matter of fact, I was told that he's so excited to be on Talking Apes TV that he even wore pants.
Hey, Ken.
Hey, how are we doing today, guys?
I'm so happy you're wearing pants.
That's right. I only do that for special occasions, and I've actually become a fan of Talking Apes TV, so I'm glad to be here.
Woohoo! Well, we are a huge fan of Zilch, but when I was listening to Zilch, I found out some things about Planet of the Apes I didn't know, and I'm kind of embarrassed about that. I had to go to another podcast to learn about something having to do with our show. Now, in our last Talking Apes TV, we had given Zilch a huge shout out because it was through your show, Ken, that I learned about in Planet of the Apes Monkees crossover, and that was that Henry Corden, who does the voice of General Urko on the animated Return to the Planet of the Apes TV series, he played the Monkees' evil landlord, Mr. Babbitt. Don't know how I never recognized that. So thanks for cluing me into that. But then came another Planet of the Apes Monkees crossover, and that was the fact that Booth Coleman, who played Dr. Zaius on the live-action TV series, he was in a Monkees episode playing a police chief. Don't know how that slipped through, so thank you for doing my homework for me.
Well, I'll tell you, we kind of do everything from talk about all of the Monkees' entire 50-year career, and we do things like the commentary tracks on the shows, so you can actually go along with them. You can set the television show to play, and we will talk you through it and walk you through the world of the Monkees. But we also cover all of the albums and the tours and just all the appearances. And it's amazing because there's the 6 degrees of Monkees, kind of what you and I were talking about, even just the different actors who were on both things and stuff like that. There's such a rich history to explore and talk about. And so far, it's never ending.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, you know what? Let's take a step back here and tell us more about Zilch, because there are a lot of fans of the 1960s and 70s television that listen to Talking Apes TV, so I know they're big Monkees fans as well. So tell us a little bit more about Zilch and how it started and why it started and your other podcasts and then your fandoms, because you have got a great wealth of fandoms.
Well, I'm just glad to be welcomed in, anywhere, but it's really been a blast. It all started out with a Kiss, the band Kiss, the kabuki wearing, fire breathing, blood spitting rock and roll band. We started a podcast called Pod Kissed.
Nice.
kind of fits. And I'm like, there's more to talk about than I love Kiss, but there's a lot more to talk about. And I started talking about Cheap Trick. We had gotten Kiss into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so we started a Cheap Trick podcast, and we started a hashtag induct Cheap Trick kind of thing to try to get them in, and sure enough, we've done it. And this year we're trying to get the Monkees in there, so hashtag induct the Monkees. Now, you're wondering how you start out with Kiss and you wind up into the Monkees or anything else that we do. Like I said, I just got kind of tired about, talking about Kiss all the time. But the one thing that was really neat about Kiss, Cheap Trick, and the Monkees is that all of those bands could have a lunchbox.
And so can't the Planet of the Apes.
Nice. And you know what? I had them all.
Exactly. And so can't Star Trek or Batman. And it's amazing that a lot of these properties are all sharing a 50th anniversary around the same time, and it's absolutely beautiful. And some of the Zilch staff also do a show called the Tricorder Transmissions, which is a breakdown and analysis of every episode of the original Star Trek series. And they've started talking about the Gold Key comics, and they're soon to get into the Star Trek the Animated Series, which was in the 70s. So they're kind of on the same trajectory that you are. And that is Jeff Hewlett and Craig Cohen, and they do that excellent show. And I think it would be cool if you guys could do a crossover and talk about the Planet of the Apes crossover comic book series with Star Trek. I think that would be really cool.
Well, that's actually interesting that you bring that up, because I'm right now in communication with the authors of that crossover book, The Primate Directive, and we're actually talking to them about coming on the show for an interview.
Well, that would be excellent, because that's, again, two great properties celebrating, around the same time of their awakening in the public consciousness. So it's just fantastic.
It's a perfect crossover, too. You see a lot of crossovers that just don't make sense, and they seem like they're there just to cross certain characters over in order to make money, whether the crossover actually makes sense or not. But when I heard Star Trek Planet of the Apes, it just seemed to fit really well. And if you read the book, it does work really well.
I can't wait to check it out.
So anyway, I'm kind of curious, because you said that you were a fan of our show now. How did you discover Talking Apes TV?
Well, believe it or not, a little bird named Richard was posting on Facebook, and I was looking, and he's mentioning Zilch, and I'm like, well, why is he mentioning that in Planet of the Apes other than they're both monkeying around? And I just downloaded the podcast. The next thing I know, you guys are talking about our show. So if you're talking about us, I'm immediately a fan. But not only was I a fan because you're talking about our show, but I'm a fan because I am a huge fan of Planet of the Apes. I'm not just, coming on here to promote my show. We've kind of talked about my nonsense long enough. Let's talk some apes. But, that movie series was just so ingrained in our culture as I was coming of age. And I remember by the time that the TV show came out, CBS had been showing the movies constantly, it seemed, because they were getting really good ratings on the CBS movies, and then they'd have them on the late night shows, and so I'd catch them again. And then the series came on, and it was just amazing. Back then, Planet of the Apes was just a perfect fit for me at that age.
So exactly how old were you when you discovered Planet of the Apes?
Oh, well, if you're looking at the movies, I was like 5 or 6 and digging them. And I remember going to the drive-in and seeing the Charlton Heston one, the first one. Then I'd have to say around the time I was 10, which would have been 1973, that's when the CBS revival, if you would, happened. So anywhere from 10 to 12, which kind of fits the TV show and the animated series.
So when you were a kid, you were also, a fan of both the live action and animated series?
Yes, but there's some tragedy that I have to talk about. As you know, Planet of the Apes, the TV series, was on CBS at 8 o'clock on Fridays. And up against them on NBC was Chico and the Man and Sanford and Son. I grew up in a house that had one television set. Thankfully, it was color. Well, my mom and my brother and sisters, we all would take a family vote as to who gets to watch what. Well, they were just interested in either watching Sanford and Son or Chico and the Man. So the compromise was I could either watch the beginning or the end of the television show. What was sad is that there was the trading cards that came out. So I would recognize where they would have the descriptions of what went on in the show, and I'd this was the one I started watching. And I would try to put it all together in my head, and we would talk the next Monday with my fellow school kids, you know what I mean, my fellow classmates, and we would they would kind of tell me what I missed. But my mother was trying to do the best to make an adequate situation or a way to work it so that everybody could get something out of it. But I actually got very shorted out of that. But it didn't stop me from wanting the action figures or dolls. I'm cool enough to say dolls. It doesn't bother me.
And we should be clear to any of the younger listeners that might be listening, this was before the days of Hulu and Netflix, where if you missed an episode, well, you didn't know when you were going to get to see it again.
So, Ken, let me get this straight. You might be the reason why Planet of the Apes went off the air because you were watching Chico and the Man.
It's my fault.
Aha! Now we're getting somewhere.
See, in the board meetings, they were like, if we had one more listener, we would keep this going.
If we had someone watching that extra 15 minutes, we would go on to a second season.
Yeah, what is it with all these people who are just watching parts of the show?
But you can't watch Chico and the Man, just half of it, because all those story threads are going nowhere. Chico's got the disc.
Yeah.
The son is going to the Forbidden City. How does this all make sense?
Yeah. But at some point, I remember getting a small black and white television. So I finally did get to see everything, but it really didn't be a true experience until the Sci-Fi Channel started rerunning them at some point. And it was great because I recorded them all off of the television, and it was fantastic. So for the longest time, I had the everything on videotape, but it was so cool to finally get them on DVD.
Now, when you say the Sci-Fi Channel, you don't mean the Sci-Fi Channel from now. You mean like
from the 90s.
Yes.
Was there a Sci-Fi Channel in the 90s, or a channel that just played science fiction shows?
Yeah. Their own made-for-Sci-Fi Channel movies.
Yeah.
Of which I worked on many. Now, when you were a kid and you had watched Planet of the Apes, what character did you gravitate toward? Who was your favorite character?
The General.
Show me some Urko love.
He's Urko-tastic.
That's what I was waiting to hear. Thank you very much.
Sure, Urko could be an ass at times, but he played a great villain. And Mark Leonard was just fantastic. He ate up the scenery, and both he and Rodney McDowall just were fantastic in those roles. And, I was watching some of them the other day, and it's just great to see how much that they were able to emote through all of that masking and makeup.
The prosthetics, yeah.
But, as a kid, when you're like 10 or 11, you don't want to be like Dr. Zaius. Like, I remember getting the action figures, or I'm just going to call them dolls,
That's what they were.
One Christmas, the Star Trek dolls came out and the Planet of the Apes dolls came out. And I got the Roddy McDowall character, and I got the ape character, like the gorilla ape kind of thing.
Ape soldier?
Yeah, the ape soldier. And I got Mr. Spock. And I'm like, Mom, what kind of message are you trying to send? Because what am I supposed to do with this? So I guess I had a crossover with Star Trek and Planet of the Apes way before the comic ever came. But I remember I used to take and make my own characters. And how I did that is I would make wax heads. I would basically form a mold and pour wax into it using Play-Doh.
Wow.
Serious. This worked.
You were a creative kid.
Well, I'm an artist by trade, which means I'm unemployed. No, I'm kidding. That's a bad joke. Things are good. But I've always been into painting and creating things, and I would make like these ape heads, and I would put them on sticks, and like that would be the ape village. Like I would make my own ape village.
Wow.
And it was kind of cool. But it was very weird to have Mr. Spock running around with the gorilla and a chimpanzee. So.
Now, did you also make one of the flash signal toys?
No, we was Poe, so we never got such advanced technology like you did.
So, if you had one of those, you and I could have been talking to each other, because I had my little Mego flash signal toy, and I would flash it, and no one would ever flash back.
And now you know why.
Yeah, because Ken didn't.
Thanks, Ken. Now, when you were outside in the playground, did you play General Urko?
Yes. And that was kind of the thrill of it, because you got to like put a hurt on people. You could play the bad guy, and it was great. So that was really the thing about Urko. And plus that helmet is so damn fine.
All right, let's get into this.
Okay.
How does Urko's helmet stay on that gorilla head of his? Ken, go.
I have no earthly idea. It's monkey magic. When you think about it, Urko was kind of like the Gene Simmons, the demon kind of character. So there's another like kind of crossover thing, but he was the cool badass. It wasn't always the smartest guy in the room.
Well, since you're comparing to Gene Simmons, let me ask you a question. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they were talking about Planet of the Apes. They talk about different movies on their different podcasts. They were talking about Planet of the Apes, and they had a guest on their show who had made a comparison that I wanted to get your take on. And they compared Lucius from the original movie to Davy Jones from the Monkees.
Well, I can see that. And, it's kind of weird that they didn't, kind of follow that same kind of thing when they got to the TV show. Back then, they were throwing teen sidekicks at everybody. You know what I mean? So it kind of makes sense. And when you look at it, not only did you have a Davy Jones type character in Planet of the Apes, but if you look at Star Trek, you had almost a dead ringer for him in Chekhov.
Yeah, then there's Robin with Batman.
Exactly. So it was a way to get the teen audience wrapped up in things. But I'm surprised that they didn't do a teen sidekick on the Planet of the Apes, the TV show.
So I just want to get this straight. You're telling me that you think that Davy Jones is like the teen sidekick character in the Monkees? And you're saying the same thing with Lucius? Because when that comparison came out, I wasn't sure what they meant, and they didn't really go into detail. And so I'm like, well, I'll just get the answer from, Ken when he's on our show.
Well, yeah, it kind of makes sense. So yes, I'm going to say yes.
Now, going with the Monkees, we had put a question out on Facebook on your Zilch, a Monkees podcast homepage, your Facebook page.
Yes.
And we asked people, hey, we're going to be talking to Ken Mills. Do you have any questions? Let us know. And Pete Blatchford, he wrote in, what was the first Monkees song you heard? What is it about them that makes you such a dedicated fan?
Well, I think that it was probably Last Train to Clarksville. I had my uncle and my mother and my aunts. They were into rock and roll, and it was a cool house to grow up in because the Beatles put an album out, you got to hear it. If the Kinks, like when the Kinks came out, when the Who came out, all this great music all the time. And then like my grandmother, she was into Dean Martin and all that stuff. But it was a really cool marriage of television, comedy, and great pop music. And when you think about Last Train to Clarksville, similar to Paperback Writer, Day Tripper with that dominating riff in the tune. And if you think about Last Train to Clarksville, it's actually a very sad song in a way because it's about somebody who's going to either go to Canada or Vietnam and don't know if he's ever coming home.
They're draft dodging.
All right, so let's cross over this question to Planet of the Apes. And since you do all these podcasts on, classic rock and roll and just classic music groups like Kiss and Cheap Trick and the Monkees, I have to ask you what you think of the classic song I'm Going Humanoid Over You from the Tunnel of Fear episode of Return of the Planet of the Apes. We consider that a classic.
I consider it a classic. And, I was watching the cartoons in preparation for this episode that we're doing today, and I'm like sitting there looking at the screen, and I'm going, what are they saying? And I backed it up 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, they actually wrote a song for this? They're on such a shoestring budget. They can't, they're characters talking and they're showing a plant or the back of someone's head or a mountain. There's one scene where they're running, the 2 main humans are running, and they're literally on top of one another. And it's like, this is the cheapest animation that I've ever seen in an American cartoon at that point for, something that would be on NBC or whatever. But they actually took the time to write a song called I'm Going Humanoid Over You. And you should play that right now because it's beautiful and I can never tire of hearing it.
Never thought that I'd be acting humanoid. That ain't a simian thing to do. Humanoids go frantic before things get romantic. Now I'm going humanoid over you. Homo sapiens go plumb bananas. Every spring just watch them in the zoo. Apes would never, ever match their minds together. But when you're near, that's all I want to do. I guess it's love that I'm feeling. Guessing love's got me reeling. I have a funny feeling you feel that way too. It's a fact this ape is acting humanoid. That sounds impossible, but it's true. If I thought that you enjoyed, I'd stop trying to avoid. I'm going humanoid over you.
Do you know who wrote that song?
No.
Mr. Neil Diamond.
Okay. Before
someone's going to believe that. So
Somebody's going to be on a trivia show, and they're going to lose the $1 million because they're going to quote Richard on that.
Well, because Neil Diamond wrote The Monkees, I'm a Believer, and many other songs, figured, okay, he's going to cross simian universes and write I'm Going Humanoid Over You. That is not true. He did not write that song. But Ken, if the Apes in Planet of the Apes were to form a band called The Monkees with an EYS, what would be their top songs?
I've actually started writing some. There's No Other Ape, which is a love song. It's kind of a ballad. Going Bananas is another one.
Could you sing me a verse from No Other Ape?
There's no other ape quite like you, girl. There's no other ape quite like you.
Wait a minute, isn't that a One Direction song?
Shh, don't tell anyone. And then there's the kind of controversial tune called Groom Me, which is kind of sensual. So there you go. It's more like a Barry White kind of funky kind of thing.
Well, then there's Look Out, Here Comes Urko and His Soldiers. There's the Forbidden City Collector. I'm just reaching here.
Now, in preparation for the show, we talked once before, and you brought up something that I found very interesting. So I want to make sure we talk about this. You thought that the Return of the Planet of the Apes animated series, there were particular reasons why you don't think that it would be made in the same way today, or it would work today.
Well, there's so many things, and this is such a rich topic. And first off, I'd like to talk about the cartoon itself. Being someone that was into comic books and cartoons, it was almost heartbreaking to try to watch the first episode when I was, 12, because it seems like nothing happens in that episode. As an adult, I can see what they're trying to do, and they're building up the next episode. But as you mentioned, this was not on Hulu, this was not on Netflix. You didn't know if you'd get to see the next episode. So if you didn't see the first episode, the second episode's not much help to you, And the animation, while being amazing, the artwork is fantastic. Love it. Can't say enough good about it, except for the weird color choices occasionally for Urko,
Urko in orange.
Well, there was too much orange, yellow, and lime green in the 70s, and too much brown as well. If you look at Mary Tyler Moore or any kitchen from that time period, that's what you saw. And it's just a frightening thing, and I still have nightmares to this day. So,
although Zeus was purple.
Yes. But there's a lot of things that you might not see today, and one of them is in the council meeting where you've got Zeus and everybody's harumphing at one another, which is an actual term, and they're talking about what you're allowed to do with humans. You're allowed to hunt them for sport. I'm not sure that would be in a modern day TV show aimed at kids, but there's this one scene where you see this carving, this very elaborate artistic carving, where you see an ape and he's used a whip and he's caught a human by the neck and is strangling him with the whip. Then as they're talking, it scrolls over to the right and you see humans crucified on targets with bullet holes in them, and there's an ape standing by them like, hey, look at what I did. That is very shocking and nightmarish for anyone who is 12, and how the NBC censors allowed that to get on television is beyond me. Unless they were sitting there going like, I can't follow this. This is too slow. Just didn't pay attention.
Well, you got to remember that in the 70s, we got Bugs Bunny with Elmer Fudd in hunting season. The whole plot was Elmer Fudd going to gun down Bugs Bunny.
Right. But the difference is that this showed actual realistic looking bullet. Right. And, a year later, all of cartoon was turning to having teen sidekicks and a teen talking animal. So had this cartoon been made 2 years later, you would have had like a young teen human and a young teen ape running around as well.
And it all would have been in outer space because of Star Wars.
Yeah, everything was in outer space, including Gilligan's Island.
And the Partridge Family.
Yes, I don't know why, but it happened. All of a sudden, you put everyone in space, and everything had, like, this is not my coffee cup. This is my space coffee cup. This isn't my gun. It's a space gun. You get the idea.
And then, oddly enough, Lost in Space was taking place in Cincinnati.
There you go. It makes perfect sense.
They took that out of outer space and put it down here on Earth.
But I would like to make a challenge to somebody out there in the Planet of the Apes community to take the Return to the Planet of the Apes cartoon animated series and make a cut that is more modern. And I'm not asking you to get rid of anything, I'm asking you to tighten it up so that it could be aimed at more modern viewers. I think it could be a very interesting challenge, for somebody who's creative enough to do a good editing job.
I think the one thing that does work for the animated Ape series, and we've talked about this many times, is that every week they would introduce the creature of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really appealed to the Saturday morning audience like myself, because I thought this was the slowest moving series, but here comes Kygor, here comes the sea beast, here comes the spiders.
All hell, Kygor. But seriously, that is really the only thing aimed at any kid that's watching. The show is really aimed at adults. And so wasn't Star Trek the Animated Series at the time. And there was a lot of things like Arc 2, which had come out, which was actually a really good show. You guys should check that out sometime. It's excellent.
Why do you think the animated show did not last? Was it because they were just so slow moving? Or in 1975, did we just have enough of Planet of the Apes and needed a break?
Because Ken wasn't watching.
I'm talking about the animated, because Ken was watching the animated Chico and the Man.
Yeah, which took place in space. Anyway.
How many people are now going to go looking for that? Because that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, there's no such thing. I think that the whole thing had run out of steam. Once it failed on TV as a series, there was nowhere else to go but the cartoon. And the cartoon was so slow moving that it killed any joy of the Planet of the Apes. You know what I mean? There was always a moral in all of the movies. And that's one of the great things about Star Trek and Planet of the Apes, is that you would have these stories that were being told about our time in their time. Whether it's something to deal with racism or the caste system or whatever, the TV show is still very strong in that regard.
Yeah, Gene Roddenberry, he was even asked to step in and help save the Planet of the Apes TV series, but by then it was a little too late.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sad. But I really think that they could do an animated series today based on the newer movies, which, by the way, I absolutely love them. And I'm not talking about the Tim Burton one.
What Tim Burton one?
Exactly. That which shall not be named. I'm sorry.
Now, we have another question here from Melinda Flowers Gildart from your Facebook page. And she writes, if you could trade places with one of the Monkees, this is the band at the Monkees, for a day at any point from 1966 until now, who would it be?
Wow, that's tough. It would probably either be Mickey or Mike. As a guitar player, I was always into Mike. You know what I mean? I've always been to like the guitar player of the band. Like George Harrison was my guy in a way. You know what I mean? I wanted to play like that. I wanted to sound like that and look as cool in a turtleneck as the Beatles did. But it just never really happened. But the weird thing is I wouldn't mind trading places with these guys like in 10 or 15 years, because they still have women that are crazy about them, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
And man, if you're a musician or an actor, if a woman liked you when she was 15, she's going to like you when she's 45, or 35. And so it kind of sets it up that there are still women that are going gaga over you.
It's going humanoid over you.
Yes, it's going humanoid over.
And if you could team up a monkey and an ape, or a simian, who would it be? Who would you team up with Galen? Not Caesar or Cornelius, but Galen. Mike, Mickey, Peter, or Davy?
Well, he needs a sidekick, so wouldn't it be Davy Jones?
Yeah, that would be cool. And I could see Urko. Every time he'd get angry and say we must kill the humans, Peter and Mike would say, don't do that.
All right, who would be the sidekick for Zero? And don't go with the obvious choice.
I don't know. Gosh, who would you recommend?
For Zero? Well, Davy's the obvious choice.
Yeah, that is the obvious choice. They would see each other over a banana and they'd get stars in their eyes.
Not Zero. She loathes bananas.
Grape juice plus.
Very nice.
My wife does not allow alcohol in the house at all because she's lived with somebody who had a problem in that area, and she will never do it again. But I was saying, well, could we have grape juice plus? And she just looked at me.
What kind of Escape from the Planet of the Apes reference is that?
Yes. Which is weird because I started watching the cartoons, pulled out the DVDs, and started watching the TV show, and she's like, why are you into Planet of the Apes all of a sudden? I'm like, all of a sudden? There's no all of a sudden going on here. And I pulled out this thing with all my Planet of the Apes Blu-rays and DVD, my whole collection. I'm like, this is not an all of a sudden. This is always has been, and I keep buying. I bought them on videotape, bought them on DVD, bought them on Blu-ray, and whatever the next thing is.
But now your wife is a big Monkees fan, so she must be having a field day right now with all the tours coming up and the Monkees DVDs and your podcast. How is she relating to the Monkees circa 2016?
She is thrilled. She's amazed. She's stunned like all of us. Whoever thought this was going to go on for 50 years? Seriously. And that goes with Star Trek. That goes with Planet of the Apes. That goes on with anything. Who would have ever imagined things that were written off by the mass media at some point?
Yeah.
Still able to survive. And it's so neat because the Monkees have this album coming out called Good Times, and they have just been getting such amazing amounts of press because they have all these new songwriters. Like back in the day, they had Neil Diamond and Carole King and so many other great songwriters, Voice and Heart and so on and so forth. But now they're getting like the guys from Weezer and the guys from XTC and Ben Gibbard and so many unusual people that at least the media have deemed as being an unusual fit. But it's actually fantastic, and it's been very cool.
And their first song that was released a couple of weeks ago, She Makes Me Laugh, is 100% 1966 Monkees, and just a phenomenal song.
She makes me laugh. She makes me cry. And I would like to be with her forever.
Now, I have a question to ask you. First off, I agree with you. It's a fantastic single. And a lot of people within fandoms, they feel like whatever they're fans of belongs to them. Like, for example, was there I know that there was backlash when the Planet of the Apes That Shall Not Be Named came out. TB is the thing that I'll mention. There was a big bunch of backlash, and deservedly so. Was there much of a backlash with the modern take of Planet of the Apes?
I think at that point, people had really written off or forgot about Planet of the Apes. It had been 10 years since that Tim Burton mess. The new Planet of the Apes 2011 came in so under the radar that I don't think people had time to judge it. It just was there, and it got such great reviews that people were willing to accept it. The only thing that held me back at first was James Franco, and I just didn't think he was worthy of the Planet of the Apes franchise, but he did a great job.
I think there were a lot of people who were very skeptical about it, because I was very skeptical about it. A little bit of it had to do with the Tim Burton movie, but it also had to do with the fact that filmmakers have been having a hard time rebooting anything with respect to what they're rebooting. And so I think a lot of people were, they were kind of on the fence, not really excited about it. But then you saw the final product and you realized that, the film was in good hands because they gave us a really, really good film that was really, really respectful to the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Agreed. I know that for myself, my particular story about that is I ignored it, spoke out against it. I said, this is something I want nothing to do with. And then the Blu-ray came down to $6.99. I ordered it, and it sat on a shelf for 2 months. I put it in, and I watched it with a bunch of people who were not Planet of the Apes fans, and we all loved it. I thought that it was really smart how they used, and like I said earlier, some of the best science fiction uses things that are going on in our times, and how they used trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's and all that to basically boost the apes' intelligence was just absolutely amazing. And Andy Serkis, the man, is amazing and can do so much silently. Just blows me away. It's not fair that he's not getting more attention for his acting.
Well, it was because of those new movies that I really wanted to do Talking Apes TV, because people were forgetting all about this brilliant TV series and the brilliant acting by Roddy McDowall, who played Galen, and Mark Leonard, who played Urko. I didn't want people to forget about that. So I came to Mark and said, Mark, I know you're a big Apes fan. We've got to do this podcast so people do not forget about this brilliant series that after 40 years still holds up.
It holds up very well.
And I did miss the prosthetic look of the apes, but I just had to separate that because being such a huge part of my childhood, I didn't want anyone messing with that. But I do realize that there comes a time when there's progress. You've got to separate that to make way for something else that continues it. As long as they do it well, then let them go and don't judge it by the fact that they might be tampering with something that you hold so precious. Because once you do that, you're going to hate everything.
Right. I would have to say that with Rhino, the company that owns the Monkees and is doing all this great stuff, putting this new album out, getting them on tour again, and doing this incredible job on restoration. And the folks who now have Planet of the Apes, we as fans should be thankful that there are people that care about these franchises that are keeping them going. And here's one of the amazing things about this, and if they decide to go the route of television, they'll have all these captures and effects down so much that they'll be able to do it cheaper and cheaper so that it can actually possibly go back into a television series, be it a Netflix or something like that, or AMC or something like that.
Yeah, I think to be cost effective, they would have to do something the animation style like Star Wars, The Clone Wars.
Just as long as there's good stories and good characters.
Right. The talent is out there. The way to do it cost effectively and have it not look cheap. I mean, now with computer, CGI and everything, anything's possible. So
yeah, especially after the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Right.
So who knows where this will go? It's kind of exciting to be a Planet of the Apes fan and a Monkees fan at this point and see what's happening over this next few years. And I mean, 2016 is the 50th anniversary of the Monkees. We call it the year of the Monkees. And I look forward to the same kind of thing with Planet of the Apes. I think the best is yet to come in some ways.
So for the vintage fans out there who don't necessarily know about the new products and happenings of the Monkees in 2016, what else can we look forward to?
Well, like I said, we've got the tour, the album, and the Blu-ray set. But there's also talk about the comic books coming back that from Dell Comics. There's that possibly happening.
Maybe we'll get a Monkees Planet of the Apes crossover.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I could see that. I could see that very easily. I'm surprised there was never a Monkees cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it would have worked as a cartoon because one of the things that works really well with the Monkees show is how cartoon it is in a live action world.
In a sense, they're a cartoon unto themselves, so.
Right, but they could have gone a little bit further and continued the Monkees with an animated series. I think that would have done very, very well. Monkeys in space.
Yeah, and if it would have done after 1975, they would have had a talking monkey as a sidekick.
And a couple of other things that I learned on Zilch, a Monkees podcast, is that they're creating Monkees dolls in the way that Mego did with the Planet of the Apes dolls. And I love these.
They're actually throwbacks to old Mego, what do you want to say, look?
Yeah.
Style? Yeah.
Even the same packaging.
Yes, absolutely.
And the Monkees are releasing vinyl. When was the last time they released anything on vinyl?
Actually, I think Barnes & Noble, and there's a couple of places where they are actually selling vinyl now. And you go in there, and there's some newer albums, but there's also a lot of the older albums, like Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, where it really should be on vinyl. So there's been this resurgence over the last couple of years where they have been selling vinyl, and I actually like the idea of releasing an old band like that on vinyl, because that's how they were originally released.
Yeah.
And, if there's a band that you love, pray to Kygor that somehow Rhino will get involved with your band because they will do such tremendous reissues and you'll get everything with the kitchen sink that the band's ever done. And it's just amazing the stuff that they've put out. That they do these things called handmade sets over at Rhino where they'll take an album like, More of the Monkees or Headquarters or Instant Replay, whatever album it is, and they'll give you every version of that song pretty much that was recorded and maybe didn't make the cut, or sometimes they'd have a different singer or a different set of musicians or whatever. And sometimes you'd get just the backing tracks. So you would get this 3-4 album set of a Monkees album. And sometimes it would come with like a vinyl 45 or a set of buttons or something like that. And it's just really incredible packaging. And the Blu-ray package that's coming out with all the bells and whistles is going to be similar package so that they will all sit on the shelf together.
Yeah, along with Rhino Records, who does an amazing job, La La Land Records released last year the Planet of the Apes TV soundtrack. And we've been waiting so long for that, and they've been releasing so many obscure soundtracks that I think it's worth giving them a huge shout out, because I love companies that will do this, like La La Land Records and Rhino Records, who say, hey, this stuff should not be ignored. Okay, fans, here you go. Here's the stuff that you've been waiting for, but no one else is doing, so we'll do it. So big shout outs to everyone over at Rhino and La La Land Records. Now, before we start to wrap this up, Ken, is there anything new in the works for you, podcasting-wise or Ken-wise?
Well, we just did an interview with James Frawley for Zilch, and he's the director of the Muppet movie and the Monkees TV show. I think he did 32 of the 58 episodes, and that goes up today. But he's coming back after the Blu-ray comes out, and it's just going to be exciting to hear him talk about, you know, how it all looks, and it's just very exciting. Plus, we've been fortunate enough to have Rhino kind of take a shine to us, and you know, the folks at Rhino are Monkees fans, pure and simple, and they have actually come on the show several times, and they've been very nice to us, and they've given us a lot of opportunities as a podcast, so we're thankful to them, and we hope this relationship continues because it's made for some fun podcasting. And at some point in the future, I plan on doing something called the Kencast, which is me talking about anything I want to talk about. So,
Okay, let me ask you this. This comes through Kathy Putnam Davini, and she wrote on the Facebook post that I had posted about interviewing you, who would be your ultimate interview?
oh gosh, that's tough. I really would have loved to have interviewed Leonard Nimoy. I'd love to interview Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley of KISS if they would do an actual interview. And by that, I mean, instead of coming on and telling the same talking points that they have in every interview. And that might be great for people who are seeing them on Good Morning America or Entertainment Tonight. But I'd really like to ask them some serious questions about how they became fans. Like, for example, we had Ace Frehley on the show, and I got to ask him, like, what was the first 45 that made you go, this is it? And it was the Who's My Generation. And it's so cool to get that kind of, you know, early look at kind of what made him want to be a guitar player, because I asked him that. It was just very cool. But as far as one definitive interview, I don't know, because I love talking to anybody. And one of the things about podcasting is we're not locked into you have to have ratings, you have to have a certain this or that. And it's really fun to talk to the people on the fringes of things. For example, if I were doing your show and I had a chance to talk to somebody who was a makeup artist on Planet of the Apes, I would love that. But some people only would want to talk to like the stars of the show. I love talking to the people that helped make it be something in the first place.
All right, now let me ask you one more question, which I'm kind of regretting asking even before I ask it. David Wills on the Zilch Facebook page wrote this very thought-provoking question. If forced to room with Cornelius, Caesar, and Galen, who would be the first to fling poo?
Oh, David Wills is a tremendous talent and a very funny guy. So this is kind of a joke question.
I hope so.
I would say Urko at Pete.
Oh my God, our show has resulted in talking about flinging poo.
Would have been Urko-tastic poo. So.
All right, Ken. Well, you know, let's leave that on a high note there. And tell everyone where they can reach out and contact you and listen to Zilch and your other podcasts like the Kisscast and your Cheap Trick podcast.
All right, if you want to check out the Podcast, just do a search for Podcast, PODKISST. Find us on iTunes and wherever cool podcasts are downloaded from. If you want to hear the Cheap Trick podcast, it's called Cheap Talk. And we review the band's entire career, and thankfully they've made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's probably what our next episode's going to be about. You can find our Monkees podcast by doing a search for Monkees Podcast or Zilch, a Monkees podcast, and you'll find us.
And for those kids out there, if they want to reach out to you and contact you on Twitter, how would they do that?
At ZilchCast or at Nightwing Ken, one word.
If you like a really well-constructed podcast, you've got to listen to Zilch, a Monkees podcast, because it was the production value and the quality that really drew me in. And it just so happens it was about one of my favorite bands of all time, the Monkees. So listen in to Zilch, a Monkees podcast.
The only danger with listening to that podcast is you'll experience what I experienced. Hadn't seen the Monkees in a long time. That podcast is going to make you want to revisit the Monkees, and so now you're going to have to go buy the big box set, or I guess the Blu-ray that's coming out. So you're gonna cause people to have to shell out all this money.
Money and time well spent. But I'd like to send a kudos back to you guys on the production value of your show. It is excellent, and I can't say enough good about it.
Well, thank you very much. And now, if I can steal a bit from Zilch, brum, here we come.
Walking down the street.
We get the funniest looks from
Every guerrilla soldier we meet.
That was a great discussion with Ken, and I'm so glad we all crossed paths, and like they say, podcasters unite.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to him. I like Ken a lot. He's very knowledgeable and a lot of fun to talk to.
Well, he grew up the same time era that we did, so he's got a lot of those same kind of fun stories and memories.
Right, well, at least now we know he loves more than one type of monkey.
And now we know who to blame that the Planet of the Apes live-action series went off the air. Now, before we roll into our discussion with Adam O'Brien from the Jogcast Network, I wanted everyone to hear this audio from a post that Angela Rushmere posted just a few weeks ago on Facebook. This is from the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade back in 1974, and honestly, I never knew that Planet of the Apes was even represented in this parade until now, and I knew we couldn't go one more episode until you apes out there heard this. We were going to wait until next episode, but that would be too long, and maybe after you hear this audio, you'll understand why the apes were never asked back.
Hello, humans! I said hello, humans out there!
Oh, I'm sorry if I shouted, but I didn't know if you could hear me. Sometimes it's difficult to hear from one planet to another, or from one mind to another. My name is Galen, and I'm an ape from the planet of the apes. This is a friend of mine and a very famous scientist on our planet, Dr. Zaius.
Hello, humans. We have come to your planet Earth because it has come to our attention that there was such a place where humans believe they are smarter than apes, which of course is ridiculous.
There is a planet of the apes where everything's been turned around. And on this planet of the apes, ape is king, man or beast, strange as it may sound.
Now, is that not just the freakiest thing? I don't even know what to say about that.
I don't know if I can give a reaction except to say, maybe we should move on.
I don't know why they didn't even try to do Galen's voice. And why did Dr. Zaius sound like he just got out of bed? Yeah, you know what? We're going to post this again on Facebook and our Facebook page just in case you missed it. So go to Talking Apes TV on Facebook and prepare to be astounded. It's about 10 minutes of your life you'll never get back.
And it is 10 minutes.
All right, with that, let's move on to Adam O'Brien of the Jogcast Network. Next up on our Talking Apes TV interview special, we have a guest that you may know as the host of the Jogcast podcast. All the way from down under, everyone please give an Urko-tastic hello to our good friend, Adam O'Brien. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam, how are things on the other side of the planet?
Nice and warm, I can tell you that much. How are you, fellas?
We're good.
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, and I can't wait to have you, Adam, because we haven't had you on Talking Apes TV yet, and we got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm really looking forward to this. But before we go any further, tell everyone who may not know about Jogcast Radio what you are all about.
Well, my name's Adam O'Brien, the host and owner of Jogcast Radio Network. You'll probably know me better as Alan R. Ryan. It's my radio name and podcasting name on the show itself. And I also write novels under that name as well. So it's probably what you all know me as out that way. Jogcast Radio is a place to talk about all types of fandom, from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings, you name it. We talk about everything. We talk about comic books. We even talk about merchandise and stuff like that. We want to let people know about all forms of fandom. It's a place to celebrate that. We have a weekly show every Friday where we talk to certain guests out here in Australia or worldwide and get their take on whatever fandom we're talking about at the time. We also talk to celebrities at the local conventions here and stuff like that. We've got monthly shows of Star Wars Jogcasts all on Star Wars. We've even got a 007 show called 00 Jogcast as well, monthly. And of course, with my co-host on the Good Film, Bad Film show with Brad Macker, we do film commentary as well.
Wow. Now, when we had spoken to you on your show, when Mark and I were on your show about a year ago, you were just covering the new Ape films. At that point, what level of fan were you to the Planet of the Apes franchise?
I think at that stage, I had only known the two areas, which were Pierre Bill's actual novel, because I had studied it in high school, and also all of the films, which I actually got from my father. He, for years, had been trying to get me to watch the original film, because he's a huge Chuck Heston fan. So he said, look, Adam, here's this great series of films, and he gave me the big VHS box set at the time, which was almost as long as my arm. And so that's how I got to know the films back in the, must have been the early 90s, late 80s.
Wow. And these were the original Planet of the Apes films.
Exactly. And I think it was Beneath that was the one that straight away I resonated with. Not so much the first film, with the gorillas going nuts and everything like that. For me, I thought, well, yeah, that's pretty damn cool.
Now, I had to ask that question because I just wanted to make sure that Tim Burton mess didn't factor in any certain way.
Never. And that's the funny thing is that I remember all the hype people were sort of bringing up before Tim was given the job. And, I was hoping, somebody half decent would get the directing job and just steer it towards something akin to the original film. But of course, Tim got in there and, he did what he did, and, it's best forgotten, I suppose. And the thing is, out of that, we got this new series of films, which is much more referential to the old. I mean, I was only watching Rise again about a month back on Blu-ray, and I just love the opening of that film. Echoes the first film, but it's done from the apes' perspective instead of the humans. For me, we've got people that are really looking after the apes franchise now that, they care as much as we do to a certain extent. And I think that's what makes it so interesting now.
Now, were you like me when you went into Rise of the Planet of the Apes for the first time? Because for me, after the whole Tim Burton mess that was made, I found out they were doing Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And I all of a sudden wasn't excited. I was kind of like, oh man, they're going to mess it up again. They're not going to do it justice. And then I went and saw it and was wowed by, oh my God, how wrong I was.
Well, that was like 10 years later, because that Tim Burton debacle was 2001.
Right, but you can't forget a debacle like that.
No, but you said you had heard about Rise of the Planet of the Apes around then. That was 10 years later.
No, you misunderstood me. What I meant was when I heard about Rise of the Planet of the Apes, when they were making it.
Gotcha. Okay. On that, when I had first heard about the new Apes film coming out, Rise, it wasn't really until like 2 months before the movie came out. So Mark, I remember calling you saying, hey Mark, did you know they were remaking Planet of the Apes and it's going to be released in 2 months? And you had known all about it.
Yeah, and I was not too excited about it. Matter of fact, I think the only reason that me and my wife went and saw it was because I watch everything and I, hang out with a crowd of people that watches everything. So I knew they were going to be talking about it. So I'm like, well, I better go see it because I know they're going to be talking about it. And I'm open to admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong. They made a really, really great film. And I'm so happy that the filmmakers who are working on it now are the ones working on it, because they really are doing Planet of the Apes justice. They're doing a really good job with it.
I heard James Franco and I already checked out. But then I thought, it's Planet of the Apes. How can I not see a new Planet of the Apes reboot? There's just no way. Even though if Tim Burton was going to direct it, I still would have gone to see it just to see his apology. But you know what? Let's focus things back to Adam here, because I'm really curious with all the podcasts that you had just named. Where would you place Planet of the Apes in your top 10 list of favorite fandoms?
It definitely falls into about probably number 3. We usually talk about on our end, Star Wars is probably the biggest one. The second one would be 007. And we do talk about Planet of the Apes quite a bit. We always bring up a lot of, particularly myself and Macca, we bring up a lot of the new film sort of ideas, whether it's Andy Serkis's performance or vice versa in the actual film, because there's quite a few Australian actors now through, particularly in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes as well. And so for us, it's sort of shedding a bit of light also on the local acting scene that are moving into these films as well. Because that, believe it or not, it's taken off quite well out here in Australia due to that.
Really? What actors are Australian?
So you've got the lead, Jason Clarke, in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. He's Australian from Sydney.
Oh, didn't know that.
And Cody Skit McPhee, which plays the kid in it as well, is also Australian.
Oh.
Okay, so here on Talking Apes TV, we have to train you on something, though. So we're going to ask the question again, and we're going to hope that you get the answer right. Where in fandom does Planet of the Apes fit? I'll give you a hint. Number 1.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay, you can edit all that in between out. You ready? It falls in number 1, boys. It is the number 1 fandom for us out here in Jogcast Radio, Quinlan's Cantina. It is the most important fandom for us out here because we have Australian actors involved in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which are moving into also War of the Planet of the Apes.
There you go. Now, you know what? Speaking of War of the Planet of the Apes, have you been following the progress on the production?
I certainly have. Now, the film itself is not getting a lot of news out there as far as what's coming in the film itself. But from the main outset, Matt Reeves is setting to basically round off this, I'd say, chapter or this trilogy, if you like. And the idea is that basically we've got everything at a boiling point where the humans have attacked, obviously, in the last film with Gary Oldman, etc. And now they have basically a militia, I would say, some type of group that are ready to attack Caesar and his band of apes. And it's headed by the Colonel, played by Woody Harrelson.
What?
Yeah. He's literally been cast as in the role as the Colonel. So I'd say we're going to get something that's, I suppose, a little bit like Rise had a little bit of conquest of the Planet of the Apes, rough sort of visual idea. We might get a bit of battle for the Planet of the Apes in this one, maybe.
Wow.
I think this might be the start of a Battle of the Planet of the Apes, because I think that I read somewhere that it actually wasn't going to be a trilogy, but that there was actually going to be a 4th film. And I think that this next film is actually going to be the beginning of something that, leads into that film. So, but I got to tell you something, because you said that you looked into it and there's not been a lot out there. Like, they're not giving us a lot of information. And I gotta tell you, I really appreciate that, because when Star Wars The Force Awakens was coming out, there was just so much out there. And I understand the whole, well, you don't have to read the article, but I was dodging so many articles that it was hard not to get some of the information. And I like going into movies not knowing a lot, keeping the mystery for the actual first viewing of the film. So I kind of hope that they do kind of keep, a lot of this stuff under wraps and we don't see a lot being given to us, so that we can be surprised when we go see the movie for the first time.
Well, you can't compare this to The Force Awakens, a movie that we've been waiting for 10 years, and you put out anything having to do with Star Wars, that's just clickbait right there.
I agree with you. They're two totally different franchises, and I understand, why Force Awakens was all over the place. I just wish that we could keep things a little bit more secret, so that when we go in, we can go in knowing only what the trailers gave us.
Oh, you're in for a rude awakening, Mark.
No, and I understand that. Trust me, I understand that. But that's why I'm kind of appreciative towards the fact that I really haven't heard a lot about War of the Planet of the Apes yet, because I'm hoping that they'll keep it on the down low so that when we go see the movie, we can get a lot more surprises. Sort of like what they did with 10 Cloverfield Lane. We didn't even know the movie existed till about 2 months before it came out. And so when we went into that film, there were so many surprises because we knew nothing about it. And I'm hoping that with War of the Planet of the Apes, they can keep a lot of stuff under wraps. I'm sure as we get closer, it's not going to happen, but I'm hoping that, it does happen, because I really do want to be surprised when I see the movie. That's what was great about Rise, is there was a lot of information about Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but not enough that when I went and saw it, I couldn't be surprised. And it was all the surprises that made it really great and really good and made me all of a sudden be on board with a film that I wasn't really looking forward to.
I had seen Andy Serkis at the Force Awakens red carpet event, and when I saw him, I just yelled at the top of my lungs, "Caesar!" And he looked over at me and gave me a huge smile and a salute.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
I was going to say, this is maybe a little bit of a hint, but the principal photography was taking place in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland area. And it's been given a secret title, as they do on a lot of these films. And it's under the name Hidden Fortress.
That's awesome. I'm surprised George Lucas didn't use that one.
And for people who were lost, do you want to explain that reference?
Well, George Lucas had using Hidden Fortress as a huge inspiration for Star Wars. And when they got around to doing Return of the Jedi, they named it Blue Harvest as its cover-up title. I'm surprised he didn't use something like Hidden Fortress. Now, Adam, before we started recording, I loved what you had said to us, going back to Planet of the Apes. You said that it was Mark and I that introduced you to this new series, the animated series, Return to the Planet of the Apes. Now, you just watched the first 7 episodes, which is where we are right now. So tell us what you thought about this animated show.
So, from the outset, I only really knew before you guys had made me aware the TV show. So I only know the live action. So when I heard about the fact that they've done an animated, that got me really excited because again, you think about animation, there's no real budget to the animation, as in like the imagination of what the artists are going to do, etc. So for me, there was the possibility that we might see Pierre Boule's full take on this material as it is in the novel, and I was so surprised to actually see most of that on there. So when Flames of Doom, the opening came up, it really for me was again a unique and different take, but also the fact that it's more like the novel got me very, very excited.
Yeah, we had just gotten up to River of Flames. And we thought, okay, let's, like we did with the live action show, let's take a break and go talk to someone to see what their take is on it. Now that you've seen the first 7 episodes, do you feel that this series is following the Pierre Boulle novel, or are they taking other liberties? What's your take on that?
I think it's got its own direction. It's got its own sort of, story. And that the reason that being that, there's little bits from the movie that it takes. And in some ways, there's even some direction, I suppose, in regards to maybe even the TV show to some extent. But it's more like take Urko, for example. I mean, this is a different style of Urko, and the technology level of the apes is very interesting. That's what made me think about this. This is possibly something live action I'd like to see down the road, maybe even.
Wow. That would be awesome.
Now, what's your overall opinion of the animated series? Because I've been really enjoying it. I've been defending it to some people who've been a little less than enjoying it.
You better not be talking about me.
Although I did not really like the Terror on Ice Mountain episode at all.
That was an awesome episode.
Yeah, well, that's because it's Richard, and, Richard doesn't have any taste. But anyway.
Hey, you know I'm right here, right? I heard everything you just said.
I know. But, of course, the fans agree with me, probably. But anyway.
Yeah, you better move on.
But I've been pretty much enjoying it, and I've been, enjoying the continuous storyline. I've been enjoying some of the artwork, although that seems to be disappearing as they go along. I think that their budget has been getting lower and lower. What is your overall impression of the series as a whole? Are you enjoying it? Are you kind of on the fence about it? What's your overall impressions?
First up, I looked at particularly the first episode, and when we see the capsule coming across, I'm like, I've seen that image before, and I didn't know where I'd seen it. And I used to live in Sydney years ago, and I remember my dad, and this is probably in the early 80s, 82, 83, something like that, had played a lot of the early morning cartoons. And what they used to do is they'd have it running from about 7 till 9 o'clock every morning, even regular school days. And anyway, there was this one show that it kind of looked a little bit like, to me, like He-Man and Masters of the Universe, but I didn't know what the show was. And it wasn't until you guys had actually put me onto the show that I realized that was actually that show. So I had seen the first 3 episodes before.
The one disappointment about this series is that I'm not focusing on Urko's helmet. Whereas in the live action, it's like, oh, Urko, slow down, you ride that horse any faster, that helmet will come flying right off. But in this show, it's just so sunken down on his head, I never have to worry about it, and I don't like that. I want to worry about his helmet. I haven't seen the next 6 episodes because I want to watch them one at a time. I don't want to look ahead, so I'm hoping there is an episode where they do take off his helmet and just see that he's got helmet hair. Like that awesome picture that Angela Rushmere had posted with Urko with his helmet hair. Funniest picture I'd ever seen. Now, what's your take on the stylistic approach to the show? Because they'll have these really awesome montages of the earthquakes and fires and different silhouettes. And I love that. It's very stylistic of the 1970s, and it really is a stamp on that era. But I just love that.
I think you've nailed it. It's very stylistic. And if anything, if you think about, I was looking at particularly Flames of Doom, the first, 20 minutes of this series in particular, sort of echoes a very iconic version of what we see in what Chuck Heston and his group went through, going through the Badlands sort of area. To me, that was the best way to visually do it, was to do it that way, and the fact that, it's more solid color, it's a little bit more retro in that way. I mean, again, we're looking at the 70s where the music too, even coming through some of those scenes, it echoes the films, but at the same time, it's not a it's not a regurgitation of it. It is, it's a unique take on it.
It's odd to hear the apes speak because they speak so clearly, whereas in the live action show, they had kind of a muffled sound like this because they're trying to speak through the prosthetics. So when we first started watching this, like the apes don't sound like the apes. That's because it's just the actor standing in front of a microphone.
No, it's just Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, really. Adam, did that throw you off, the fact that Urko sounded like Fred Flintstone?
Yeah, that's what was weird because I got used to after you guys had introduced us to the TV show, and I mean I've been watching that probably over the last year since we chatted. I've watched the full season of that probably 3 or 4 times now because the big thing is I like Galen. I like the character, but the thing that gets me is that going from such I suppose, again, I have to say iconic take on Urko. I mean, there's nobody else that can do Urko like the TV show. But coming into here to have this completely, it did throw me off a little bit.
Adam, there's something you keep repeating over and over again, which I think is great, and that Talking Apes TV really introduced you to the live-action TV series and to the animated series, because that was our intention from the very start, was to get people to know.
Hey, Rich, we succeeded.
We did. Mission accomplished.
No matter what, they can't take that away from us. We introduced it to somebody on the other side of the world, down under.
Yeah, and that's what our mission statement was. Let's get people knowing that there are Planet of the Apes TV series out there. Not just one, but there's a live action and an animated series, because I had talked to Planet of the Apes fans when Rise and Dawn had come on out, and they said, oh, I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan, and I'd ask them about the live action show. They had no idea what I was talking about. And so Mark and I sat down one day and said, you know what? We need to get people on board with this, because these shows were just fantastic. And I was very, very hesitant about watching the live action show, because what if it didn't live up to what a 5-year-old Richard had seen back in 1974? So I was kind of scared. So I'm glad I had a support group like the podcast to ease me through it. And I had so much fun. And we have so many listeners who said either they've never seen this show and they love the fact that we're covering it, or they don't really have to watch the show because they can just listen to our show, and we go through the stories so accurately with sound bites. It's like they're listening to a radio play, which I think is really fun. So I'm very glad that you had said that we had introduced you to this new world of Ape TV.
My life is complete now.
When I got the actual box set, which came out from here to Australia, I sat down and I actually went through your back catalogue and used them as almost like commentaries as I watched them. And the insight that you two gave on this area, I mean, it's fantastic. The only time I ever sort of heard about it before was when I think it was Paul Bateman from the UK had actually mentioned a few times about how he preferred the TV show to the movies. And, it was, I sort of went, oh, really? I didn't know whether it was legit or not. And it wasn't until you guys have really shown us, the doorway to this great series.
I got to admit something here that I've never admitted before. And I think I prefer the live action series to all the sequel movies. The original Planet of the Apes is one of my all-time favorite movies. None of the sequels, TV shows come close to it. It's just that high up on my radar. But when it comes to the sequels, like, Conquest and Battle and Beneath, I think I kind of do enjoy the live action TV series a little bit more. I really liked Galen, and I think Galen really draws you in so strongly that as much as I love all the sequels to the original Planet of the Apes, I think I do enjoy the live action TV series a little bit more.
Are you saying now or then or both?
I can't really say back then when I was a kid, but right now when we went and revisited them, because I watched all the movies again before we revisited the live action TV series. And once again, the original Planet of the Apes, it's the tops. Nothing's going to come close to it, or at least nothing so far has come close to it. But when I looked at the sequels, I think I enjoyed the live action television series a little bit more, with the exception of the Horse Race and Liberator episodes.
As a kid, I loved the TV shows much more than the films, because the films were very, very heavy. So there were a lot of messages, a lot of statements to be made, whereas the TV series was just, let's just have some fun. Let's have Urko and his men chasing down Galen and Pete and Alan, and let's just sell some toys.
I think with the sequels, when it came to the movies, you could start to see as the budget got less and less and less.
Well, yeah, because all the ape gorillas were all wearing masks, and they didn't even try to hide it.
Right, but with the television show, I feel like, the production value pretty much stayed the same all the way through. And once again, the way that Roddy McDowall played Galen and his relationship with Pete and Alan was just fantastic. And I thought that, with Urko, we had an incredible bad guy. Yeah, I'm admitting it right now on Talking Apes TV for the first time that I really did like the live action TV series more than the Planet of the Apes sequels.
Well, if you're going to reveal that kind of information, this is the place to go.
All right, one more question from me, and this is something that I think we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast, and that is, the whole controversy around who played that little child ape in the first Planet of the Apes movie. Was it Gary Dubin or Felix Silla? So I'm going to ask you, are you on Team Dubin or are you on Team Silla?
I'd have to say Silla. I look at it, I think it's the stronger choice for me. What about you?
I've met Gary Dubin. He seemed like a nice guy. I've been trying to defend him, but every time I reach out to him to try and get an answer, I get no response, and that makes me kind of go Team Silla. So, he told some great stories when we met him at the signing. I want to believe them, but until he comes on and says, hey, I'm willing to defend it, I'm going to be Team Silla. Although, we haven't really talked to Felix Silla either, but I really haven't had the opportunity. So I'm just kind of waiting for the opportunity to present itself, like meeting him at a comic book convention or something.
Yeah, for me, I'm on Team Felix Silla just because he is a well-established actor and everything lines up. Even the pictures that Angela Rushmere had posted on our Facebook page, everything all adds up. As for Gary Dubin, I want to be on his side because I paid $10 for his autograph at that Apes book signing, and I don't want to feel like I got rooked. So I'm on the fence, but I think if it came down to it, definitely Felix Silla. But you know what? At some point, we're gonna meet up with these two at a convention or a signing somewhere, and we're just gonna say, all right, just tell us what is up. All right there, Adam. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Talking Apes TV. Really appreciated all your insight into the animated show and to everything. And you're always a fun guy to talk to. You're always so chipper and positive.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Mark, that was a lot of fun talking to Adam as well as Ken. For Adam, I really appreciate the fact that he stayed up until like all hours of the night since Australia is 17 hours ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it as well.
All right, so with that, let's wrap up this very special episode of Talking Apes TV, the interview special. Now, what do you apes think about these interview special shows that we have? Is there someone aside from the actors you want to hear us talk to on upcoming shows? Do you like these mid-season breaks? Let us know. We really like to hear from you.
For right now, we want to thank our guest Ken Mills from Zilch, a Monkees podcast, and Adam O'Brien from the Jogcast Network. We also want to give a huge thanks to Angela Rushmere, who's been doing so much great work on our Facebook page, and to Rob Dehlinger, who composed all the original jingles, no matter how many times I have to listen to them, you hear on Talking Apes TV. And of course, that includes the two Monkees Planet of the Apes crossover jingles you heard earlier in this episode.
You do know that I have got Yabba Dabba Urko now as my ringtone, so now whenever you're over, I'm just going to keep calling myself.
Oh, God.
Now, speaking of Rob Dehlinger, check out Rob's work at his website, robdehlinger.com. That is ROBDEHLINGER.com. And that's where you can find his upcoming tour dates with his swing band, Stompy Jones. And he plays at Disneyland here in Anaheim every once in a while. And Sarah and I will go over and we'll yell out things like, Yabba Dabba Urko! Play this guy walking through Neverland jingle! He loves when he gets requests from the audience.
So anybody who goes and sees him in concert, make sure you yell out, Yabba Dabba Urko, and just keep chanting it until he plays.
And he will. He will. Rob's a great guy.
And I have one more thing that we want our listeners to be aware of, and that is if you own an Android phone and need a way to download this Urko-tastic show, Google Play Music now has podcasts. So what this means is if you use your Google Play Music app and do a search for Talking Apes TV, you'll be able to download the show directly to your Android phone.
Now, if you want to contact us with anything you'd like to see in the future, please email us at apestv@skywalkingthroughneverland.com. You can tweet at us at Talking Apes TV. You can send us a message on Facebook, where you can find us at facebook.com/TalkingApesTV. And if you haven't already, please like us on Facebook. And if you want to go one step further, you can always go over to iTunes and write us a review. And be honest. We love the honest reviews. If you haven't already, please join me and Sarah on our Star Wars Disney podcast, Skywalking Through Neverland.
So until next time, this is Mark.
And this is Richard.
And we will leave you with a preview of the next episode in the Return of the Planet of the Apes series, Screaming Winds. Now, oh my god, I can't believe this. I actually get to say it this week.
Go ape.
Hey. Go ape.
Go ape.
Go ape.
Go ape.
Go ape.
Yep, stop recording.
Go ape.
Unthinkable, General Urko. Nothing on this planet could make me turn the government over to you.
There is one thing, Dr. Zaius. This. A relic of the past, but it assures my future.
Where did you get this? It is a link to a past best forgotten. I order you to destroy it.
From now on, I give the orders, Dr. Zaius.
You'll regret this, Urko.
We'll see, Dr. Zaius. Tomorrow.
Thank you once again for listening to Talking Apes TV. You can help support Talking Apes TV by posting about us on Facebook, Twitter, or just tell another Planet of the Apes fan. We would also appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. A link to our iTunes page can be found at skywalkingthroughneverland.com. Talking Apes TV was created by Richard Wolosky and Marco Gushewitz, graphic design by Sarah Wolosky. Talking Apes TV is not affiliated with 20th Century Fox or the CBS network. All names, sounds, or related items of Planet of the Apes are registered, trademarked, and copyright 20th Century Fox and the respected trademark and copyright holders. All rights reserved. Talking Apes TV is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Hey Entertainment, copyright 2015. All rights reserved. No part of this show may be repurposed, reproduced, redistributed, or rebroadcast without the written permission of Hey Entertainment.